Right, hello and welcome everyone. While we are sorting out the presentation mode, welcome to this session where we're going to talk about Apex, Git, and plain text in code.
Maybe a little bit for an explanation because Apex is a low-code tool. Okay, every time I'm using Apex, it's a low-code tool on the market. We have this since 20 years on the market, and I'm in that team. So every time I'm using, we're used to it. So sorry for that. It's yeah. But let's start. We are talking today about the CI/CD process with a low-code tool, and thanks for joining us. I'm very nervous. It's very amazing for me speaking in front of you guys. Yeah, but let's jump into it soon.
Yeah, just because we're working for a big company, you may have seen that we work for Oracle. There is a lot of procedure before we go into talks, and we're showing something about things that happen in the future, and they may or may not happen in the same way we show them here. So just to be on the safe side, we put this on and skip it quickly because
We
it's
have
boring
this
stuff.
famous disclaimer, right? So today's agenda, we were playing around a little bit with the CI/CD process, and I was always very unhappy in the low-code area that we do not have really this process on an easy way to do. It's kind of, if you know the structure, I don't want to introduce you a lot into our low-code tool. Only the structure from our low-code tool is that it's sitting in the database. So you need to have a database. You need to use it as a kind of a repository. You store some metadata to use the tool. You don't have to use the data at all, but at least the application, which is kind of a UI where you can nicely bring together your first dashboard, whatever. But these always gets us thinking about the CI/CD process when you use something with database.
Because it's much simpler to use CI/CD with applications that are stateless, where you just roll back by deploying the previous jar in case of JavaScript and or Java or your other artifacts. It's so much simpler. But if you've got stateful applications, you make changes to your schema. You can't easily go and change to the previous incarnation because there's always the potential of data loss. And data loss is something I've been a production DBA for far too long. I don't like data loss. So going back to a previous version is typically very hard. And Oracle came up with an opinionated framework on how you can do CI/CD with the front end, including the database, so that you've got a safe way forward. And
back to the agenda. I always have to stop him a little bit. Back to the agenda. I was playing around a lot of times with AI into the low-code area. I mean, everybody's using currently AI. Hands up, who is using AI?
for the record,
50%?
that's like 90%.
No, that was 50. It depends on the light. So I was playing a lot around with ChatGPT, for example, answering questions, whatever, answering the question again. I know a lot of people think they ask ChatGPT a question, then the output is right. It's not. I think you know this. So sometimes I had a use case, I asked ChatGPT a lot, and it doesn't come back with the right answer. One time I wrote in, if you don't provide me the right answer now, I will ask DeepSeek. I got the right answer. It was really fun. But then last year, that was last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Where the MCP, the Model Context Protocol, came out. And this was the next thing we could really start to play with. So something new on the market. So we will have a deeper look today, not into the product world of Oracle. We will have a look into the MCP world, how we can use this with CI/CD. And in the end, we will also show some capabilities we have with low-code, but not inside the low-code tool. Something you can use as a developer for working with low-code tools in the CI/CD process or whatever, which also includes some couple of demos. Hopefully, every time you're doing a live demo with AI, it's fun. And in the end, maybe some Q&As. But we have spoken now a couple of things, but that's me. I'm in IT since long years. My first programming language was COBOL. Who knows COBOL? Yay, thank you. And then I moved into the database world, was responsible for some customers, for data warehouses, and 16 and a half years ago, I joined Oracle. It wasn't my plan to stay that long in that company, but it always provides you great new capabilities to develop yourself. So I started in consulting, was responsible for real application cluster databases, then I was in pre-sales, and then I moved into being an enterprise architect, From that on, I felt like I have to go back to more technical stuff, more development as well. So I went back in a team was called specialist. Today, everybody uses the the naming black belt. It's very famous on the market currently. But last year, I went back to software development into Oracle, responsible for Apex. And
Okay.
because I'm always very nervous when I do presentations, I'm always happy having Martin with me.
Right. So I'm relatively new to Oracle. I don't want to bore you with my details. I've been in the industry since 2003. I didn't write COBOL, luckily, and so I'm an infrastructure guy who turned into a developer, tuner, slash, and now I'm doing AI. So I've seen everything from each end of the spectrum, and that's kind of interesting and keeps me motivated. And this whole thing started as a thought experiment because when MCP was introduced, like in when was it, June, July, everyone started talking about the topic. You saw newspaper articles about it, and we thought, yeah, can we use natural language, or to what extent can we use natural language in the development process? And that's what we're going to show you.
Yeah, and that's really the fun part because natural language means you talk to an AI, and I always say it's the same like having communication in everything, like in relationships, whatever. It's always hard to use, but we found out later. We will show
Yeah,
you.
we will show you an example where I gave up too early. Okay, so before we start with the details, we would like to give you a quick rundown of what we have seen in terms of AI development. So we started. It all started off with large language models, and like 2 or 3 years ago, they became mainstream, and everyone started using them. And then, or over time, there were agents that allowed you to interact with LLMs to do specific things. And that's what we're going to use in the demo. And what we're going to use as well is the low-code platform we talked about, which kind of sounds counterintuitive that we're here talking to developers using a low-code platform. But just because it's called low-code doesn't mean you don't have to write code. The more complex your requirements, the more easily you find yourself in a situation where you write probably considerable amounts of code.
Who is working with low code actually here?
Any low-code platform.
Yeah. Ah, perfect.
I can
Thank
see
you.
2 hands.
No, there were some
Or
more.
3, 4.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go on.
Next part. Low-code application platform. Before we had pre-AI area was like, okay, we have a tool where we can do some fast application development. I always say for simple use cases, like the finance department wants to have a dashboard, it's really fast doing this. If you are on the data, you have your data available, so you can build easily in 5 seconds a dashboard. And that's really true. But with the AI area, it was not really in this case. With the pre-AI area, we could also empower citizen developers. And with reducing the complexity through the abstractions, we can use AI as well in this era.
So we thought about making this a little more tangible. And also we're big Star Wars fans. And this is why we thought, bring a quick recap of what has happened in the world of AI and AI-powered development. And I think the summary of those things is kind of on this slide. So on the left-hand side, we had the large language models. You could ask them questions, but they were kind of dumb. You put text in, text comes out, but they can't do anything in terms of taking actions. And this is where the agentic AI now kicks in. And you can have agents that book flights, that do things for you. And the difference is summarized on the right-hand side, where you need to actually talk to the AI. They give you something back in text form that is your responsibility if you just ask ChatGPT. But if you couple that with an agent, the agent is then able to actually carry out that action. I think that's what we wanted to say.
What famous tool can we use with it? We have, I think, a lot of people are using ChatGPT. We have Gemini. We have DeepSeek. It's really good having a competition. Perplexity. I use Perplexity more for coding rather than ChatGPT. And for the agentic AI, you can use Copilot, Claude. We have Klein in place, and some other tools as well. Yeah, and I think the LLMs part you already explained.
Yeah, we talked about those.
And the fun thing between when you compare these tools together, like Copilot with Klein, there are really differences when you come back, when it comes back with an answer and how it interacts with you.
Yeah, and just like every other vendor on the planet, Oracle has come out with an MCP server which allows you to interact with a database. And this is interesting because you can now talk in natural language to your database. So you don't necessarily need to know SQL if you're an analyst to ask about a forecast of kind of sales predictions for a given area. If you have got the right tools in place, these things can be asked, these questions can be asked and answered. So this is really quite interesting from that point of view. And we're going to use that later on.
Yeah, and I always want to have my private personal assistant. Okay, this is why we started to work with the MCP, and we connected our MCP to our Oracle database with our tools. Who is actually working with MCP? Is it fun?
Mostly nodding to the question
So
there. That's fun.
for a short explanation, how do I see I'm a person who needs to see something visually. So for me, I just forgot to put out the right one. You see this little thing where you plug in this little hub, and you can plug in some HDMI, you can plug in USB-C or something. It's like a hub. And I always see the MCP server or the MCP environment like a hub for my request, for my API request, right?
Yeah, like if you look at the Model Context Protocol IO page, they'll tell you they see this like a USB hub. And I think we've got this on the next slide where you can see the MCP client, which is kind of your IDE with the agent plugin, uses the LLM to interact with various MCP servers. You're not limited to one. You can use as many as you like. In our demo, we'll use the Oracle database MCP server, but that could be anyone talking to a database. And then we've got the GitHub MCP server as well. So we're going to interact with the GitHub repositories as well.
What does an MCP server integrate, or what is the basement of an MCP? It has 3 different capabilities. It's the resources, it's the tools, and the prompts. So the resources are kind of data that provide context for the tool. We have prompts, which are predefined templates to help with the LLM. And tool is the executable function in the AI. And this is mostly the thing we are using, which is currently, I think, the famous part on the market.
Yeah, it's like a remote procedure call that you invoke through a standardized interface. And the way this works with your IDE is shown here on the right-hand side. So essentially that boils down to you start your IDE, we're using Klein later on. Klein will then interact with a config file to find out which MCP servers are available. It interrogates those using JSON RPC. What do you have to offer? And then it goes back to the user, kind of awaiting a prompt. The prompt goes out. The LLM interrogates which tools can help answer the question or satisfy the prompt, and then it goes back and forth. And the cool thing is that you can use the MCP server, which kind of is self-describing, to invoke certain tasks on a connected system. In our case, we'll use the database, or we use GitHub as well.
And why are we here? Because we also have built a small MCP server.
We have also built a small MCP server.
Not we, so our teams, but yeah, we have built. So we have for VS Code an extension for working with the database. Who is actually a DBA here? Okay.
It's a developers conference.
Yeah,
You're
sometimes
surprised.
there are DBAs as well. I know, I was there as well. But yeah, we have. Who's working with VS Code? That's
far more hands.
So we have built a couple the last years a VS Code extension for working with databases, for Oracle databases, and this VS Code extension is going to be more powerful the next years as well. So we also introduced or included the kind of working with MCP server there, and yeah.
Yep. So I think we show this during the demo.
Yeah.
Because pictures show more than words. And this is just an overview of the things that you can do with the SQL with the MCP server by Oracle. So that essentially it boils down to there are pretty cool things you can do, which we don't need to go into detail. But there is something we should go into detail in, isn't there?
Yeah, this is actually the biggest question I had when we started working with AI, and especially with the MCP server, because there is something like you are running commands and you tell the agent, hey, do this command, and then he says, yes, let me do this. And then you have 2 points. You can say approve all, or you approve every step the MCP server wants to do. And I really can recommend doing the last point, because you really have to read what command does he really want to run, and don't give him freedom to do everything, okay? This is one of the biggest points. Secondly, I was 2 weeks ago in Athens. I had a discussions with some developers there as well. And they had the experience that if they put some code into one of the AIs or in the MCPs, they found out that there were some small code snippets coming into the AI, wherever she picks the code snippets. She brings together the experience of the code it founds, but this snippet was kind of a hack. So the code was then infected with a Trojan or something. And this is why I can only recommend never put your whole code into the AI or the server. Only work with parts of the code and be sure that there is nothing in the code you don't want to have there, okay? It's really, really, you really have to think about the security working with AI, working with MCPs, everything AI in development.
And I think yesterday yesterday there was a podcast, the To Do podcast. It's a developers podcast where they say somebody has used a code snippet that was generated by AI that took malicious code from a GitHub repo and injected it into their own code. So that was an interesting story as well. So be careful with, trust but verify. I think that's what they say.
Okay.
Okay. So after all that introduction, I think it's time to
show a little bit
of a demo.
Can we actually duplicate the screen?
Like mirror the screen to the big screen? Is that possible?
Yeah.
In our settings.
Okay. Sorry.
Display.
No.
You can see it.
Arrange.
No. Extend
Mirror.
Yeah? Mirroring is so much better because it doesn't mean we have to crane our necks that bad.
Is it big enough?
No. This is really not good to read.
Okay.
So we've started off in VS Code using Klein as our AI agent, so to say. And you can see on the right-hand side, there is a plan and an act switch, which allows us to go from ask questions to ask questions and let it do it.
Yeah, and this is the difference to Copilot. If you work with Copilot, you have really the ask part, and you can choose an agent to work with.
Yeah, it's a different drop-down.
Yeah.
And essentially, it shows the MCP config, doesn't it?
Yeah, so we have on the left side the MCP config and this is also the difference between VS Code and the Klein, the Copilot and Klein. Copilot brings in the MCP configuration into the VS Code, .VS Code area, and you see the token is actually not visible. This is because it saves into the, for example, branch. In our case, we are using the Klein MCP settings, which is a file we have in our home directory. This is why the token is visible.
But that won't ever get committed.
Yeah, yeah. And we have, in our case, two MCP servers addressed. The first one is the GitHub MCP, because we need a connection to our repository. And the second one is the SQL CL MCP we have spoken about, which comes from Oracle, because we want to interact with the database as well. And yeah, we have both enabled.
Should we tempt the faith and see if the AI is willing to talk to us?
Yeah, so in this case, let me shortly list the repository.
So we prepared the GitHub repository and created a personal access token to that repository, which we feed into the MCP server, and that is kind of least privilege only, so it only allows the GitHub MCP server to look into that GitHub repository, but nothing else. Because the last thing you want is, being issues filed in other projects that inadvertently get filed.
Thanks for talking while I was connecting, authenticating. Because the Klein AI we are using is an Oracle-sponsored environment, so we don't have to pay for the tokens, which is actually cool. Okay, so he's now, I sent the request. Did I send? List repository, you see my request, and now he's waiting for, or he's running the command or searching for what he has to do. And regarding to the network you have, it runs a little bit longer or slower, and you see live demo is always very interesting because you wait for the output.
It does work eventually.
No, it works. So we have Klein wants to reach out to the repository, and I say approve. Here you see the button for auto approve. Don't do this. And when we send again, what he gives us exactly the information about what is in the repository. This is the difference to Copilot as well. When you connect with Copilot to your repository, you get a minimum set, kind of an overview. I mean, you can always tell the AI to do a detailed information, but if you do the same commands in both environments, it's different. So he exactly lists what I have in my repository. And he says, okay, there is these scripts, there is an app, which is my low-code app. We have various SQL files for database, for tables, whatever. And we want to...
Let's establish a connection to the database and see which connections are available to us. And this is very similar to all the other MCP servers that connect to databases. You need to know which connection to use in order to talk to a database, right?
Yeah, he knows exactly when I say list repository, he knows, oh, I have to go to GitHub. Let me show the GitHub repositories. And for list connection, and this is what the hub means, for list connection, he knows now, okay, there is a database part. List connection is more a command, maybe referring to a database. So he is reaching out to my database and uses for, you see here, the SQL CL MCP server. I say approve, and then he lists my connections. And in the next step, hopefully, I mean, you see this already, but he makes it in a nicer way after the API request. And then I can choose my connection.
Eventually. So what happens in the background is that the LLM interrogates the various MCP servers that are available on the system for the one that most likely matches the prompt or the request of the user. And it then finds out, hey, there is this one thing that may help me connecting to databases. And that's what we're doing right now.
And I immediately told him, please use the first one. And then he hopefully reaches out to the Podman. So actually, the environment is running on a Podman environment. And he started to build there some containers. I have my database container there, but I have also the Podman containers, which are actually the MCP servers. And now we are waiting to connect into the database. You want to tell something about the database?
Well, there's one of the we're there. So it wants to use that connection. It also verifies after it has asked for permission what type of connection that is. It verifies the user and some settings that are to do with national language, so date formats and stuff. So we're pretty good right now.
It's really nice that he gives me a lot of feedback where I'm connected, what can I do in this environment. Yeah,
just make sure that the connection is usable as well. What's interesting is what we found out later on, depending on the MCP server that interacts with your database, is that it works in its own separate session. So we found out that we were refreshing our application and we were expecting data to be there, and there wasn't. We needed to tell the MCP server to commit in their transaction, or else that wouldn't have been visible.
And sometimes you are lost in transaction. I never found one session again. Okay, we have now the connection to the database. We have the connection to the repository. Do we want to create a branch?
Yes.
So I will create a branch called
Let's call it
called
Code Talks 2025.
branch code talks 2025.
And this is also interesting because this is now going to realize that the command should be executed locally rather than on GitHub. At least that's what it did last time we tried it. I mean, it did it twice in a row, so that was pretty standard. And
On the right, on the left corner, you see we are currently in the main branch of our repository. And what I want to do is now I want to create a branch, and I want to see what recommendation does he gives me when I talk to him about the DevOps or CI/CD lifecycle. So sometimes he comes up with weird ideas, next steps, but most times he's very, very good in do we also want to push this branch now? We want to make it public, whatever. But yeah, let's find out.
let's find out. This should be a local branch creation, and it also uses the new syntax. It used git switch rather than git branch. So
you see the command here, what he wants to run. So we have the git switch with the branch name, and then also the status.
And interestingly enough, it does that in a terminal session. And this is the tight VS Code integration. It just opens a new terminal and runs the command. So it did it, and then now it verifies whether it did it right. So it can suggest further next steps.
And you see now on the left bottom corner, we are now in our new branch, and we can change some files as soon as the API requests.
Yeah, we could ask it to analyze our schema, couldn't we?
Yeah, he still wants to.
What does he want to do?
Create and switch to a new.
We can reject that. We can push later.
Let's analyze our database. I'm too.
And this is really interesting because it's not you can ask it. Well, when I was a developer, the one thing that is always hard is to come up with sample data that makes kind of sense, and especially if you've got parent-child relationships in your data model. Creating mock data for unit tests, for example, is something where I found this extremely helpful. It now goes off and analyzes the tables that it finds in the schema we're connected to using that connection, and it will tell us what's stored in there. But the next step might also be then create sample data for that. I think.
Yeah, and happily he only analyzes our tables. I should have said MCP tables. Maybe it's easier. Otherwise, he's going through the whole database schema, and there might be some more tables. But you see, we see the MCP servers table. We have the MCP server capabilities. So our data model, actually, we asked him some weeks ago, please create a data model for MCP servers so we can create an application out of this example data. And we do not only ask to create the tables, we also asked to create tables and put in there some some data. And this is what it looks like. We have a really nice data model. Forget about the last table, but we have the MCP vendors, which is the parent table, and then we have MCP servers and MCP capabilities, which rely on the other ones. So we have primary keys with these ones. He's now telling us the data dictionary part. Okay, we should have done this on the 3 tables only.
Yep.
But he's now listing every table we have in there, and we can be more explicit as well.
Yeah. So, and the next step then, if I were to develop locally on my container instance, I could then ask it to create some sample data. I could export that sample data and put it into my Java project or whatever language you're most comfortable writing code in, and that would then be spun up using test containers, for instance, and then you could inject that data into your environment, run your unit tests, and that's a pretty cool thing. And it, especially since it respects foreign and primary key relationships, which I think is pretty impressive. We even ask it to provide only real MCP servers.
Yeah.
So
it's important to ask when you create example data, ask for real data, because otherwise it will give you car companies, for example. They never existed, okay? So on the right side, you see now our low-code tool Apex, where I'm not building apps with it, I'm building this Apex environment. But we have built a very simple application here. And in for example, in my shared components, I have an application definition, which is called code.talks app. And the new feature we are bringing out soon is the Apex Lang feature. Apex Lang is a feature where I can export the application from my workspace, from my database, into VS Code, and I have the structure of the application, like I have my pages, I have shared components, I have the application description in the application.apx file. And this is where you see it's a human readable language where we can, based on a grammar, we can now change the application outside of VS Code. So we can deploy this in various tendencies, whatever, environments. And for the CI/CD process, it's very, very good and easily to integrate this in the process. And the third use case for this is we want to train LLMs on this. So if somebody wants to create an application in the future via AI, it can reach out to the Apex Lang definition format and then create an application based on your idea, where you don't have to really think about, or you always have to think about, but it can do a lot more with regarding to your specification. So in this case, I want to change, for example, only a small part. I will save it. For our VS Code extension, I have a run button where it calls then the SQL commands, which is the tool we have described. There we have an import and export functionality to send this to the server and a compilation in the background. And when I say now run this, where's my environment? Button there.
It's running.
Yeah, hopefully work. So I can refresh the page. And ta-da, we have 2025.
So the idea of this format is that it's diffable. It's you can check it into Git. You can have humans review the code and also review the changes. And the biggest advantage, as she said, is having AIs trained on it. So you can say, create an application. I want to have a dashboard based on those 3 tables, forecast, and so on and so forth.
So next step, we see that there are some changes of the application part, and we want to deploy this into main. So what should I do next?
Yeah, I guess we have to add those to your local branch and commit and push. So again, this is part of the thought experiment that we had initially. So can we do this with a minimum amount of tech involved, just by means of natural language?
Let's find out what he's doing then. He did ignore me.
Okay,
He was not finished. Let me shortly copy. I'm too lazy for writing. So I always love to talk nicely. To be honest, I'm still a believer, even if it costs some tokens. I'm still a believer to say thank you all the time because, I have watched too many times Terminator. Okay. Okay, I haven't sent the command.
But you did, yeah.
There is another command you see probably here. We had a couple of times how to say, we want to run a SQL command in a prompt, a SQL prompt, to do an export. It's called the SQL project export, where we have to open up a database connection, and then the command has to run. We tested this a lot with Copilot. When we tested this with Copilot, he always wants to have a feedback from the action he's doing. But if you open up a SQL command prompt, you will not get a feedback. So he always closed the connection again and could not run the command because it was a SQL command. So what I did, so we were sitting together.
I gave up. I thought this doesn't work.
So 3-4 times we asked the Copilot, please run this command, and then it didn't do this. And so Martin says, come on, he cannot do this. Let's go. Let's do another demo. And this is why I said it's really, really good to have a good communication skill with the AI. Maybe I'm thinking too weird, but I wrote the AI, please run this command, which is the first command to open up a SQL prompt based on this connection. And the most important thing, don't wait for output. So then he left the connection open, and he could run the command, we put in later the project export command.
So the interesting thing is that it came up with a here doc. So it injected a here doc into that command line tool rather than trying to start the command line tool and then insert text, which it couldn't. So that was quite interesting.
Okay. Did I miss something? Yeah.
Okay, so does it push?
Client wants to run this command. No stage changes to commit. Git commit. Stage all untracked. Yeah.
Yep. So I should be doing it now.
So this is what I meant in the beginning. Read whatever the MCP server wants to do. It's sometimes there are some small commands in there you don't want to have. Sometimes he believes, oh, dropping a table is cool, or hey, I don't need this script. It's really, really important. I think this is the most outcome of this.
Yeah, trust but verify.
Okay, this will take some time. Maybe I will do this in parallel as well. So he will run now the current branch.
Oh, it pushes now. Yeah.
It pushes the blueprint application APX file, and then he will clean up as well.
The other thing that we didn't say previously is it also came up with a commit message, and that's also a use case I find pretty cool, because I'm terrible at summarizing my changes. So git commit m fix this is not really what's helpful. But the LLMs can analyze the changes that are currently being staged and then come up with a suitable commit message, and that's also a pretty cool thing. And it will do the same later on. Hopefully, when we've got time to get there, it will also do the same with a pull request. So it comes up with a pull request and a suitable description of the changes in your pull request.
Yeah, the funny thing is I'm really lazy in writing, so I'm really happy if he recommends me a command and I can say only do it.
Yeah, looks plausible. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think, what else do we have to show? The process.
Yeah, we can probably show the GitHub
we have
repository.
to have time for questionnaire. You know, we are running over time.
Yep. So should we show the GitHub repository where it did the push to? So if the network's connection's been good, we should see the new branch now appear in GitHub. If it ever refreshes. Hey, it did it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I think the rest you will believe us that he can close the branch, delete the branch, and okay, cool.
So what we did in the next steps is we asked it to create a pull request, assign the pull request to one of us, and later on you can also tell it to merge the pull request. That obviously requires a bit of trust, or you need to be very careful that your change is so small that it doesn't really hurt. Because auto-approving pull requests is probably not what you should be doing, but it's possible.
Some links you can click on and learn more about it. And also maybe follow us on LinkedIn. And then I think thank you.
Yeah, I think it's time for Q&A.